Hi everyone, welcome to Yoga with Glenn. I'm Glenn. Today is part 2 of our Yoga Basics series. I'll be covering 4 very simple, very basic yoga poses. I'll give you the breakdown of each, the meaning, the modifications, and the proper alignment. Please like and subscribe to the channel, it helps out a lot. Hop into something comfy, hop on your mat, and let's go. The first pose I'll be going over is table posture or tabletop pose, Barmanasana. Barma meaning table, and asana, of course, meaning pose. So this is very simple. On our hands and knees, our elbow stacked over our wrist, our knee is underneath our hip. Everything should be in proper alignment. Fingers facing forward, or you can turn your hands out slightly like this. Toes, you can either have them tucked or released, shoelace side of the foot on the ground. Head and neck is neutral. Back should be flat, shouldn't be sticking up like this or anything like that. So Barmanasana, tabletop pose. Very simple, very basic. You'll find this in almost every yoga practice or yoga sequence. Our next posture is child's pose or balasana. Bala meaning child, and asana, of course, pose. So we get in child's pose. We'll take our knees as wide as our mat, big toes touching, and just sit back. Your hips should come in contact with your heels. Move your hands forward, and your forehead should come in contact with the ground. If it does not, you can grab either a block, or if you don't have a block, a blanket will do, or just something to put underneath your head or your forehead if it doesn't come in contact with the ground already. So it should look something like this. But again, if you can have your head come in contact with the ground, that's great. But everything should be in line with your neck and your back. And your hips should touch your heels. If not, we can grab a blanket, either a yoga blanket like this or just a regular blanket you have around your house. You can put it on top of your calves, just above your heels, and sit back on that. So that'll fill the gap between your hips and your heels. Same thing, stretch arms out, back flat. And this is a great pose to do if you need a rest in the middle of your yoga sequence. If it's just too much for you, you can just come down and sink into this child's pose. Another place you can put the blanket is under your knees, especially if you have a thin mat like this or you're just working on the hard floor. This helps a lot. And if the pressure is too much for the tops of your feet, you can tuck the toes and sink back into that. Although I do recommend releasing the feet. Again, you can put a blanket or something underneath the tops of your feet here to make it easier that way. Another variation besides the arms straight out, you can bend at the elbow. And if we've been working shoulders a lot, this is a great one to stretch out the shoulders and take some pressure off. So bend at the elbow, head still on the ground or on the block or whatever prop you're using, and see if you can touch your shoulders with your fingers. Or you can have your prayer hands like this and bring your thumbs to the rest on the back of your neck. And if you're here in the middle of the practice is too much, this is a great place for a lot of deep breaths just to catch up on your breathing. Some more variations, you can bring your knees to touch and sink back like this. Although this one, more chance of you needing that block to rest your head on. Or you can have your arms down by your side here. But this is another pose altogether. And then finally, For our last kind of modification for this pose, you can bring your knees as wide as possible. Again, a blanket will help here, and this will give you a good stretch on your hips. For the next pose, come into that table posture. And this one we've done before, it's our cat-cow. Cat is Marjayasana, Marjayi meaning cat, asana meaning pose, of course. And cow is Bitalasana, Biti meaning cow, and asana again, pose. So for cow pose, that is our back bend, our chin goes up, our chest goes up. We can bend at the elbows to turn up this treatment, but there should be an arc in your back, and imagine sticking your tailbone up in the air. And usually this is done with an inhale, and on an exhale is when we go and we round our back like this. We tuck our tailbone for cat pose. Our shoulders from here, our shoulders separates, and we let our chin hang, rounding our back, sticking the center of our spine towards the ceiling. So again, with an inhale, we have cow pose. And with an exhale, we round into cat pose. And these are great for a gentle warm-up, especially a spinal warm-up, usually done at the beginning of our yoga sequence. For our final pose today, we're doing Warrior 1, or Virabhadrasana 1. Vira meaning hero, Bhadra meaning friend, and asana, of course, pose. So to get there, come into our table posture. We press back into our downward facing dog like we learned last week. You can either just step straight to the front, or you can go three-legged dog and step your foot between your hands. Rise up, stepping the back foot slightly in. A nice bend in the front knee. Back toes should be faced 45 to 15 degrees. Should be some kind of turn here. If your heel is not touching the ground, you can spin your foot at least 45 degrees out until it does, or at the most 45 degrees out until your back heel does touch. But still have that nice bend in the front knee. Even pressure in the balls of the feet and the heel in both front and back feet. If you place your hands on your hips, again, like we talked about last week, we have that bowl. So it should be not sticking out one way, tailbone not too tucked, and not pointing too far forward. But these front hip bones should be nice and square. They should be facing forward. Arms should be straight up in the air, not close to your ears like this, but down and separated. Elbows straight. And this is our classical expression of Virabhadrasana 1, or Warrior 1. This posture can be used as a warm-up, or it can be used as a main posture or peak pose. And it's the starting point for several other postures from Warrior 1. And since we've done it on one side, we always do it on the other side. So we'll place our hands back on the mat, and we'll step our back foot back a little bit. Bring this front foot back, and from here we can press back into downward dog again. Raise the opposite leg, bring that foot to the front. Step forward just a little bit with the back leg. Still a nice bend in the front knee. So in the comments below, tell me if this side feels a little bit different than the other side. For me, it definitely does. I have limited mobility in my left ankle. So for me, I need to bring it in just a little bit, just so I can have that good contact on the ground. Again, the back foot should face as far forward as possible, but still maintaining contact with the ball of your foot and the heel. Again, a nice bend in your knee. The hips should be pointed towards the front, or towards straight ahead of you. And your arms lifted straight up in the air. Not biceps next to shoulders, but there should be some space there. So shoulders back and down, elbows straight. And I didn't say this on the other side, but palms facing together. And this is our Virabhadrasana, or Warrior 1. So to come out of this, generally, you can go to some other postures here, but generally to come out of it and to come back down to the ground, we would just bend back over, placing our hands to the mat, stepping back with both legs, and we can come back into our table posture. So that is all I have for you for our part 2 of Yoga Basics. Thank you everyone for joining me. Namaste.